What happens when a beloved television host comes face to face with someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them? In just 22 seconds, one comment would tear apart what was supposed to be a friendly interview and expose the true character of a guest who thought she could walk all over anyone who dared question her. Last night, millions of viewers witnessed something absolutely shocking, something that nobody saw coming. A television moment so explosive, so raw, that it left everyone talking. This is the exclusive inside story of how one of television's most respected hosts stood his ground against someone who clearly believed she was above accountability. The morning started like any other at the studio. Piers Morgan was preparing for what he thought would be a standard interview segment. The guest had specifically requested to appear on the show, claiming she had important things to share with the world. Little did anyone know that this would become the most talked about television moment in years. "Good morning and welcome back," Piers said to the camera, his usual confident smile in place. "We're here with our special guest, who joins us live in the studio. Thank you for being here with us today." The guest, dressed impeccably and sitting with perfect posture, smiled back, but there was something in her eyes, something that suggested this wasn't going to be the smooth interview everyone expected. "Thank you for having me, Piers. Though I must say, I'm a bit surprised by some of the things your production team mentioned before we went on air." Piers raised an eyebrow. This wasn't how interviews typically started. Usually guests thanked him and waited for questions, but this guest seemed to think she was in charge from the very first moment. "Oh, really? And what exactly surprised you?" he asked, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the unexpected opening. "Well, they mentioned you might ask some rather pointed questions about my recent decisions. I just want to make it clear that there are certain topics I won't be discussing today. I hope that's understood." The studio fell silent. Camera operators glanced at each other. This was live television, and the guest was essentially trying to control the entire interview before it had even begun. Piers had been in this business for decades. He'd interviewed presidents, celebrities, and world leaders. Nobody, absolutely nobody, told him what he could and couldn't ask. "I see," Piers said slowly, his smile becoming more strained. "Well, I appreciate you letting me know your preferences. However, I should mention that this is my show, and I ask the questions that I believe are important for our viewers to hear answered." The guest's smile faltered for just a moment before returning, but now it looked forced, almost plastic. "Of course, Piers. I just thought we could focus on the positive things I'm doing. The charitable work, the inspiring messages. Surely that's more valuable than dwelling on negativity." "Charitable work is certainly admirable," Piers replied. "But our viewers are intelligent people. They want honest conversations, not promotional material. They want to understand the real person behind the public image." "The real person?" The guest's voice rose slightly, and for the first time, a crack appeared in her composed facade. "Are you suggesting that my public work isn't real? That my efforts to make a difference aren't genuine?" Piers could sense the shift in the room. The guest was becoming defensive, and they hadn't even gotten any serious questions yet. This was exactly the kind of behavior that told him everything he needed to know. "Not at all," he said calmly. "I'm simply saying that real conversations involve discussing all aspects of someone's life and choices, not just the parts they want to highlight." The guest shifted in her chair, her hands gripping the armrest slightly tighter than before. "I think you're being unnecessarily aggressive, Piers. I came here in good faith to have a pleasant conversation." "Aggressive?" Piers couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "I haven't even asked you a single challenging question yet. If you consider basic journalistic principles to be aggressive, then perhaps you're not ready for this kind of interview." "I'm ready for anything you can throw at me," the guest snapped back, her mask slipping further. "But I won't sit here and be attacked by someone who clearly has an agenda against me." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Crew members were whispering among themselves, and Piers could see his producer making frantic gestures from behind the cameras. This was spiraling quickly, and they were only 5 minutes into what was supposed to be a 20-minute segment. "An agenda?" Piers leaned forward in his chair. "My only agenda is truth. Something that seems to make you very uncomfortable." "Truth?" The guest's voice was getting louder now, her composure completely abandoned. "Don't lecture me about truth when you've spent years attacking people who can't defend themselves." "I attack people who can't defend themselves?" Piers was genuinely taken aback. "I hold public figures accountable for their actions. That's what journalists do. That's what the public expects from us." "The public expects you to show respect," she fired back, "something you clearly know nothing about." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Piers had been insulted by guests before, but rarely so directly and with such venom. He could feel his own patience beginning to wear thin. "Respect is earned," he said, his voice remaining steady despite his growing frustration. "And it goes both ways. You can't come on my show, try to dictate the terms of the conversation, and then lecture me about respect when I refuse to comply with your demands." "Your show?" The guest laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "This isn't your personal platform to tear people down, Piers. This is supposed to be journalism." "This is journalism," Piers replied firmly. "Real journalism asks tough questions. It doesn't provide safe spaces for people who want to control their narrative without challenge." The guest stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. "I don't have to listen to this." "Actually, you do," Piers said, not moving from his seat. "You agreed to this interview. You specifically requested to be here. You can't just walk away because you don't like the direction of the conversation." "Watch me," she said, reaching for the small microphone clipped to her jacket. But Piers wasn't done. Not yet. "You came here because you wanted something?" Piers continued, his voice cutting through the studio tension. "You wanted to use this platform to rebuild your image, but you only want to do it on your terms. That's not how this works." The guest froze, her hands still on the microphone. Something in Piers's tone made her turn back around. Her eyes were blazing now, all pretense of civility completely gone. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what it's like to have every single thing you do scrutinized and twisted by people like you." "People like me?" Piers stood up now, matching her energy. "You mean journalists? People who ask questions that the public deserves answers to? You signed up for public life. Nobody forced you into it." "I signed up to make a difference," she shot back. "Not to be bullied by small-minded people who build careers on tearing others down." The insult hit its mark, and Piers felt his professional restraint finally snap. "Small-minded? I've been doing this job longer than you've been in the public eye. I've interviewed world leaders, exposed corruption, and held powerful people accountable. What have you done besides complain when people don't treat you like royalty?" "At least I don't hide behind a microphone throwing stones at people," she retorted. "At least I'm trying to do something positive with my life instead of spreading negativity and hate." "Asking tough questions isn't spreading hate," Piers replied, his voice rising to match hers. "It's doing my job. Something you clearly don't understand because you've never had to work for anything real in your entire life." The studio gasped. Even the camera operators stopped what they were doing. This had gone far beyond a typical heated interview. This was personal now. "Never had to work?" The guest's voice reached a pitch that made everyone wince. "You think everything was just handed to me? You think I haven't faced challenges and overcome obstacles?" "I think you've lived in a bubble," Piers replied coldly. "I think you've been surrounded by people telling you how wonderful you are for so long that you can't handle it when someone asks you a simple question about your choices." "My choices?" She was practically screaming now. "What about your choices, Piers? What about your choice to attack people who are trying to make the world better? What about your choice to spread lies and misinformation?" "Lies?" Piers was incredulous. "What lies? I've asked you exactly 0 questions about anything controversial. I simply refuse to let you control the interview, and you've had a complete meltdown." "This isn't a meltdown," she insisted, though her shaking hands and red face suggested otherwise. "This is me standing up to a bully who thinks he can intimidate anyone who doesn't bow down to him." "You want to see intimidation?" Piers asked, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "Intimidation is coming on someone's show, making demands about what can and can't be discussed, insulting their professionalism, and then playing the victim when they don't comply." "I'm not playing anything," she snapped. "I'm exposing you for what you really are." "And what's that exactly?" "A pathetic man who builds himself up by tearing others down. Someone so insecure that he has to attack people to feel important." The words echoed through the silent studio. Every person in the room knew they had just witnessed something that would be replayed and discussed for years. Piers stared at the guest for a long moment, his face completely unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, and absolutely final. "Get out." "What?" The guest seemed genuinely surprised, as if she hadn't expected consequences for her behavior. "You heard me. Get out of my studio. Get out now." "You can't kick me out," she protested. "We're live on television." "Yes, we are live on television," Piers agreed, "which means millions of people just watched you have a complete breakdown because I wouldn't let you turn this interview into a promotional advertisement. They watched you insult me, attack my professionalism, and show your true character." "My true character?" She was sputtering now, completely out of control. "What about yours? What about the fact that you're throwing me off your show because I dared to stand up to you?" "I'm throwing you off my show because you're behaving like a spoiled child who didn't get her way," Piers replied. You wanted to come here and control the narrative. When I refused to play along, you attacked me personally. That's not how adults handle disagreements." "Adults?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You want to talk about adults? Adults don't ambush their guests. Adults don't try to destroy people for entertainment." "I didn't ambush anyone," Piers said firmly. "I told you this was an interview, not a promotional opportunity. You're the one who turned it into an attack when you realized you couldn't manipulate the situation." "I'm not trying to manipulate anything," she insisted, but her voice was losing steam. The fight was going out of her as she realized she had lost complete control of the situation. "Then answer this," Piers said, moving closer to her. "Why did you really want to come on this show? What did you hope to accomplish?" For the first time since the argument began, the guest was silent. She looked around the studio, at the cameras still rolling, at the crew members staring at her, at the mess she had created. "I thought," she said quietly, "I thought I could make people understand." "Understand what?" "That I'm not the person everyone thinks I am." Piers studied her face for a moment. For just an instant, he saw something that might have been genuine vulnerability, but it was too late now. "You know what?" he said finally. "You're right. You're not the person everyone thinks you are. You're worse." The guest's mouth fell open. "How can you say that?" "Because everyone thinks you're entitled and out of touch," Piers replied. "But I thought maybe, just maybe, there was more to you than that. I thought maybe underneath all the privilege and protection, there was someone real, someone who could handle a challenging conversation like an adult." He shook his head. "But there isn't. There's just someone who wants all the benefits of public life with none of the accountability. Someone who thinks respect is owed to them rather than earned." "Security," Piers called out, never taking his eyes off the guest. "Please escort our former guest out of the building." As security approached, the guest made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "This isn't over, Piers. People will see this for what it really island." "You're absolutely right," Piers replied as security gently but firmly guided her toward the exit. "People will see exactly what this island. They'll see someone who couldn't handle basic questions, who attacked a journalist for doing his job, and who threw a tantrum when she didn't get her way." The studio doors closed behind her with a definitive click, and Piers turned back to the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, straightening his tie and returning to his chair as if nothing had happened. "I apologize for what you just witnessed, but I hope it serves as a reminder that in this studio, we believe in honest conversation, not manufactured content." He looked directly into the camera, his composure completely restored. "When we come back, we'll be discussing something far more interesting than entitled behavior. We'll be talking about real people doing real work to make a difference in the world." The red light on the camera went dark, and the studio erupted in whispers and shocked conversations. But Piers just sat quietly in his chair, knowing that sometimes the most important thing a journalist can do is show people exactly who someone really is when they think nobody important is watching.